Hello and welcome to the North Metro SBDC programming.
All right, let's get started. So my name is Raul Lopez. I am the current interim director for the Center for North Metro Small Business Development Center. We call it SBDC. And how many of you you could put in the chat real quick if one, if you know anything about the SBDC, you've interacted with this before, put a one in the chat. And two, if this is your first time ever interacting with us in some capacity. Let's go ahead and do that. If it's something you can't access the chat right now for whatever reason, that's totally cool. You can put a thumbs up if you know about the SBDC. The emojis. By the way, if you have questions at any time, you can ask in the chat. But also, Dora and I were very casual about this. You can just raise your hand. You can unmute yourself and say, "Hey, real quick question." Just a little bit. Okay, cool. Yeah, so we'll go deeper and deeper into like what SBDC does as we go along. But just a quick touch on that for anyone that hasn't heard of SBDC or doesn't have a lot of knowledge yet. So we are a business education organization, and we are federally funded. Also, we get a lot of help from local municipalities, things like that, right? And so we are pretty much free for the most part, about 95%, except for a couple programs that we have are very low cost, like our Leading Edge, which is a business plan program, 9 weeks for $3.99. And we're not here to make money. We're not here to sell anything to people. It's just, thankfully, the government actually set this up a while back, and we're able to provide really awesome service for very, very, very affordable or free. So take advantage. Our number one tool for the most part is going to be our free one-on-one advising. So has anyone done any one-on-one advising with us? You can unmute yourself and say, "Yeah, me." Michelle, maybe? Luz? Yes. Do you mind, Jessica, you want to say something? Go ahead.
I was gonna say I did one, but I had to stop doing the mentoring with her because she didn't offer times that that were the same.
Okay. Where are you located?
In El Paso
El Paso
County, Colorado Springs.
Okay. So further down. Okay. Totally. Well,
Yes,
hopefully
I have met with Dora and it was very helpful.
Yeah, good. Awesome. Yeah, Dora's amazing. So yeah, and like you just heard, Dora's part of our network and maybe does some a little bit elsewhere as well. But every center does have a territory. I encourage you to try to even if it's not a childcare specific person, work with a business advisor, because I mean they're just gonna have perspectives that you haven't thought about. They're going to have resources that you're not aware of. They're going to have hopefully lots of knowledge and experience in business to be able to guide you in different things. And it can be invaluable to meet with somebody just even on like a somewhat regular basis, once a month, once every quarter, to touch in and say, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think?" I really believe that it should be like a once a week type of thing and really go after it, but not every center is built that way, and not everyone business owner is ready for that either. So totally. Since you're based out of Denver, will this still work for me being in the Springs? So we're Denver, we're North Denver Metro. Technically, we don't even cover Denver, the city, just a heads up. So we do Adams County, like the big cities in Adams County, Broomfield, and Arvada. And now if you're in the Springs and you need help with childcare specific stuff, and you're doing this course, Dora is here for that. So I highly suggest, like anyone that's on the call right now, and I'm going to reiterate this over and over and over every call that we do, is meet with Dora, meet with Dora, meet with Dora. We have, and like I said, with funding purposes, just so you know, we have a certain amount of funding allocated, not only for the course so that it's free for everybody, but also so that we can pay Dora so that she can meet with y'all a certain amount. And we have plenty of funds. So use the heck out of her right now. And we only have a couple months to do it. We're going to do this again, but not to go too deep into that rabbit hole. Anyhow, So that's super huge value. And I will drop the links in the chat as we go in a little bit here when it comes to how do you schedule with the Dora and everything like that. Okay, so that's just a little quick thing of mine. Quick background. I'm a former personal trainer, independent contractor for many years. So I had my own business. Eventually had a gym, own a couple Airbnbs currently, and work for the SBDC. And I am your point person for you got a question, you're struggling with the tech, with the getting a hold of somebody, reach out to me. Okay. So I would like to hear from y'all a quick intro, your name, where you're located, whether maybe you're a home, in-home, or a center. And then, what's the thing that you're most looking to get out of this course? And Jessica, why don't we start with you?
Sorry, I was talking to my kid. So I plan on opening a daycare center. I already have like the name picked out, and I'm in the process of looking at a building. I'm just kind of trying to get in contact with some of our licensing specialists out here just to make sure that the place is able to be licensed out here. And I have a walkthrough with the health department on in 2 weeks to see if what qualifications I need to get or update there. So I'm just kind of in the very beginning stages of it. And I'm sorry, I know that there was one more question, but my daughter was talking. Can you repeat it?
No worries, no worries. Yeah, just curious, what was the main thing you're looking to get out of it? So out of this course?
I guess just to know what I don't know necessarily, because I think that as things keep going, I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that was a thing or something I should have thought about. And so I guess just more information and, just excited to see where this goes.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, and let's go with Michelle next.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Gray, and I'm a licensed family home provider in Commerce City in Adams County. And I'm just finishing up my first year of being licensed and being a UPK provider. And that was like my sole source of income this year, just doing UPK, which was great. I loved it. And now I'm trying to get more kids to sign up for next year for UPK, and also looking to expand it, just being daycare. And then, so I'm hoping to increase my knowledge of how to reach out and find other people since I'm not a known name yet. And also looking to increase my quality rating. So I just got my level 2, and I know this class could help me get that 3, 4, 5, and just looking to grow and expand.
So thank you, Michelle. Luz, please share.
There you go. Hi, I'm Luz. I'm from Montrose, Colorado, so I'm very far. I've done the business when it first came in, the funds, I think during COVID time. And right now, I've been doing childcare for like 28 years. So I'm just looking if there's new informations out there that's available.
Awesome. Looking for the new stuff. Thank you, Luz, for being here. Maria Elena, please, if you can share.
Hi, my name is Maria Elena. Hi, everybody. I live in Commerce City in Adams County, and I have a home daycare, and I like it expand more my home daycare, and it's the reason I come in here. Sorry, my English is not very well, but I try.
No, you're doing great. Thank you for being here. Okay, who else do we have here? Sarah Cooper, please.
Hello, my name is Sarah Cooper, and basically I'm in the idea stage. My biggest struggle is that I'm 35 weeks pregnant right now, so not the newest baby, but my youngest right now she's going to be 4 on the 25th, and she has multiple disabilities. And so as I've been looking for daycares, I've noticed that a lot of them are not equipped to take care of kids with special needs. So I haven't started a daycare. I have done like some babysitting in the past, some CPR training, but I came to absorb as much as I can and see how people get these started. But more specifically, I'm looking to start something for disabled children on a small scale basis. I'm already a at-home caregiver for Ashley, so I kind of figured if I'm looking, other people are looking, and that's kind of where I come in. I want to be able to provide that service, as I'm not finding it here. I'm in Lafayette, Colorado, and I've really been struggling. I think the closest I found is in Longmont for Wild Plum that can accommodate her needs, and so that's kind of why I'm here. I'm an open book and sponge to kind of absorb as much as I can and see how you get started and how other people have gotten started.
Great.
Yeah, that's been
Yeah,
it.
thank you for sharing. That's a meaningful thing that you're trying to do, and of course look for. So I think that's everybody right now. What we're gonna do next is I want to just go through a couple more of the resources and tools. So the Google Classroom, we sent that link out. Did anybody have any problems getting into that? Not here. Okay, great. So I'm just going to do it just so it's on the recording. But if you're having any issues with getting into Google Classroom, that might be because we don't have a Gmail address or a Gmail email account that we used to get you into it. So if you're watching this and you're having that challenge, reach out to me and then we'll get you set up with the right setup there. Let me share my screen so you can see what that looks like.
Raul, I'm just going to mention real quick that for
Yeah.
you guys, if you meet with me, that will count as business coaching for your rating. So if you are concerned about getting additional points for your rating, any of those coaching hours, I can write you a letter that you've gotten that business coaching, and that counts for, I believe it's 2 points for 4 hours.
That is awesome. Good to know. Thank you. So can you guys see my screen?
We can't see it yet.
No.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, okay. Just took a minute. Cool. So this is the Google Classroom. You'll be in the Fundamentals for Childcare Businesses class. This here is the tabs up at the top. The stream is kind of like a Facebook profile posts. So it's got all the different things that people are sharing, etc. Now this is where you're going to put your homework. Okay. And what we'd like you to do is just drop your answer here each week to the homework. Keep it short and simple. What Dora ends up asking you to do most of the time is not super involved. We just want to see that you were here or watched the recording and you made an effort on making understanding out of what you were seeing and participating in. That's the main thing. And this is part of it that is for the PDIS credit, right? So anyone that's here for PDIS credit, we'll go over that more in depth later as far as what the requirements are. But part of it is making sure that you have that you were attended every session and you did the homework for every session. And again, so attendance in this case would mean that if you miss a session in person, that's okay, as long as you watch the recording and do the homework. Okay. And so that's here. If you have questions, you can post them here as well. Although it's not something that Dora is necessarily watching, and myself, I'm not necessarily going in on a daily basis looking at this. So it might not get answered right away. If it's something that's urgent, you're better off just emailing me. Okay, now, so classwork is where all the materials are going to be that we do have. So you can start here, and then there'll be a little bit of an explainer there. Class contact sheet, I still need to update this. But what you can do is you can go in there and you can start to actually put your own attendance. So you know if you were there today, you can go in and say, check the box for session 1. I'll just show you what that looks like real quick here. Oh, okay, I'm not going to show you that right now. Let's see. So now PDIS credit. So let's talk about that real fast. So if you want to get that PDIS credit, there's 3 criteria. One is attend all the sessions and complete the homework. Okay. So again, if you watch the recording, that counts as attending the session, but you still need to post your takeaway or answer the homework in the stream on Google Classroom to get that credit. Okay. And then if later on I'm going to be saying, hey, I didn't see that you did this homework, and I do check. I try to do a really good job of making sure everybody's doing this stuff. And just be like, hey, no, I posted it. Here it is. And if you keep receipts, that's always a good thing. It helps me just because there's a lot of information to siphon through sometimes. Okay, so you need to give me your PDIS logger username. Usually that's an email of some sort. It might be the email you already have. We already have. It might be a different email. Just you can actually add that your PDIS email to, once I get this updated, to the where to go? Let's go back here, sorry. To the class contact sheet. Okay, so once I get this updated, there'll be a column with the email, PDIS email. You can add your PDIS email in there on your own. And if for some reason, and I'll remind you several times about this. Once the course is done, on the last session, we'll go through this. We would like you to do the post-course survey. And there's an English and a Spanish version. And this is probably not updated just yet. I sent that out administratively, but sometimes it takes a few weeks before that's ready to go. And that is a requirement. So you must complete all three of these to get the PDIS credit. I will send all your information to the person that will give you the PDIS credit. So you don't have to worry about that. They will create your certificate that will be in your account and everything like that. Okay. So that's that piece there. And then some other things. The Zoom link will be here. I'll always shoot that out to you in an email before the class starts anyways. Session 1 and a recording, the previous course classes recording will be in there. But once we go through it after a day or two, I'll have the updated recording in there as well. There will be PowerPoints slides in here. Now, if there's new slides that Dora has made for whatever reason, she'll get those to me within a day or two, and then we'll get those updated in there as well. A list of licensing specialists, for example, on week 1, and some other resources that go along with that particular week, right? Now, I will tell you this, sometimes the weeks will get a little shifted around, and that's because we've had scheduling challenges with speakers, things like that at times. So just feel we're going to be a little bit flexible with that in terms of looking for the right people in the right times and whatnot. So that's pretty much self-explanatory. The rest of the Google Classroom, it goes through all the sessions and some more resources at the end there. And if you have any questions, you can't find something, again, just reach out. Now, there's no grades, there's no grading. We're not going to sit there necessarily look at your work. If there's something specific question, that's where the one-on-one sessions come in. Reach out to Dora, get with her, and she'll go in depth on things and challenges with you. Okay, and now last little thing I want to go over is the pre-course survey. I just want to reiterate that again. Let me stop sharing. So pre-course survey, we've got a few minutes here to kind of kill. So let me drop the link for that. And let's, who hasn't had a chance to do the pre-course survey? Anyone here? Or has everyone done it?
I haven't done it.
Okay, great. So let's just get that in there. Let's take a few minutes to do that. And if anyone else has any other questions, random stuff they want to just ask right now, go ahead and do so while Sarah and anyone else is working on that pre-course survey. And this pre-course survey, it really helps a few things. One is it allows us to get an overview of where you're at right now. And so we can kind of see, oh, okay, great. Michelle is thinking about these things. Jessica's in this place in her business. And then it helps Dora and I to tailor any of this content as best as possible to the overall class needs. Also, it gives us a good framework for understanding where you are and then where you end up by the end of the course. So when we see the post-course survey, we can see, okay, how have we done in getting people to progress, right? And that's really strong for us as well. So yeah, work on that. Any questions so far about anything?
If I put my PDIS account username in the pre-survey, is that good enough? Or do I need to get it to another way too.
Oh yeah, I did put that question in there brand new this time, so I forgot I did that. Yeah, that's fine. You can just put it there, and I will transfer it to the sheet. No worries.
Okay.
Thanks for asking that.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
For the PDIS credit, for someone like me who's not licensed yet, just kind of in the idea stage, should I put my email there or just put NA?
Dora, that's probably a better question for you to answer.
I
Are
would just
you
put NA for now.
okay?
Okay.
Any other questions at the moment?
Raul, if we have a minute, I guess I'll introduce myself.
Oh yes, please.
Hi, I'm Dora Sparta. I'm the Director of Business Services and Community Development at the Denver Early Childhood Council, and then I also do consulting for the SBDC on the side. There's a link to schedule with me, and if something doesn't work for you, or you're like, I need to do 8 a.m. or whatever, just send me an email and I can work around your schedule. And I put my email in the chat. I'll put it in there again for those of you that joined late as well. But I've been in early childhood administration for 20 years. I have an MBA, a master's in nonprofit management, and a master's of project management, as well as a master's of human resource management. So generally, I can kind of cover most things. I'm a generalist. But I will also like piggyback on what Raul said, like the specialists here and like the speakers we have a huge amount of knowledge that we don't always get in ECE. And sometimes, we need more of that business piece, especially with the CCAP freeze and all this other stuff that's happening. So it's really, really helpful. And if you can do consultation with a financial person or the marketing speaker, like all those people, it's really valuable. I think the average amount you'd have to pay for that is like $150 an hour or something. But through this class, it's free. So like take advantage of these specialists because it's kind of like specialized knowledge that we don't always have access to. So I would definitely throw that in there too. So generally our format is like, we'll kind of do a welcome, we'll get settled, we'll have a speaker come, they'll talk for an hour. And then usually I present for an hour on like various ECE specific things. But this isn't super formal. You guys can get your dinner, your blanket, whatever it is you need to be comfortable and like, just kind of listen, but do ask questions and participate when you can, because it's really helpful for us to, know what you guys are thinking, and whatever question you have, somebody else probably also has. So feel free to put things in the chat or just unmute kind of as we go along.
All right, that's all I've got at the moment. Any other questions here before we go ahead and start our next part of the presentation? No, and one more thing. I did drop the link to the contact sheet. If you can just open that up, just mark yourself as present under session 1, and just check the box. Just do that for me. And it's in alphabetical order according to first name. All right, I suppose we can potentially get started a little early here. I see Miss LePage, and is Christina here? Yeah, awesome. Are you guys ready to go ahead and get started?
Hi, yes, I'm ready. I think Christina's on here too, and she's probably ready.
Yeah, hi everyone.
Cool. So we have our licensing specialists here today, and they're going to go over some top violations as well as and how that corresponds to in-home and for centers. So I'll let them go ahead and introduce themselves and take it away.
All right, I'm Tina LePage. I'm a lead licensing specialist for the Denver area, and I'm going to be presenting tonight along with Christina. And I've been a licensing specialist now for 10 years and a lead for a couple years. So then I can let Christina introduce herself as well.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Christina Palmier. I'm also a lead licensing specialist in the Boulder area. I've been a specialist for about 6 years now. So.
All right. So, Raul, if I remember, I read an email and then you just said you really just want to focus on the top 10 violations for each centers and homes. And then if we have time, because it's probably going to be a quick presentation, do you want us to do anything with background checks? Because that always seems to trip people up too.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, perfect. Okay, let me get into my slideshow here. Okay. Can you guys see my screen? Yes? Okay, perfect. All right. So first, obviously, this is the licensing presentation for centers and homes regarding the rules and regulations that apply when you obtain a license. Basically, we're just going to do a quick presentation for the most common, the top 10 violations. But first, I wanted to point out just that the rules that apply to centers in homes in general, just so that you're aware of it, because some of them, sometimes we don't think that they apply. So for childcare centers, those are the 2.1 rules. We did change all of our numbers recently. So what used to be the 7.7 rules are now the 2.1 rules. So the rules that would specifically apply to childcare centers are the general rules. They technically apply to everybody. Childcare center rules, which are the 2.2 license, and those are specific to actual childcare centers. And then, which is where the top 10 violations would come from. And then the special activities rules, which is 2.6, those really apply to things like swimming, kayaking, hiking, biking. Like they're very specific. They're special activities. So they do apply sometimes for centers or homes. Just familiarize yourself with them. I wouldn't get too deep into them unless you think you're really going to be participating in one of those special activities. They really apply to our camps, our residential camps. And then for the family child care homes, again, the general rules, which are 2.1, they're the same again for everybody. Those actually go over things like fees, background checks, what we allow on a background check, what we don't allow on a background check. So background checks, there's a huge section in there. So if you need anything on that, that's where you would go, would be the general rules. And then your fees and anything else that would pertain to everybody. Family child care home rules, which are the 2.3 rule regulations. Again, those are specific to child care homes. So make sure you're pulling the correct homes. And then again, the special activities, pulling the correct rules, because you don't want, if you're a home, you don't want to work off of the child care center rules. How to stay informed. You can receive everything through our CDEC calendar, etc., and go onto our newsletter. So there are ways for you guys to get informed on new things. So now I'm going to jump to a slide, so bear with me. Okay, so we're jumping to the top violations. So these are the things that when we go out and we do our inspections, these are the things that are standing out the most for violations within specifically centers or homes. And so for homes, we actually see the number one would be the expired healthcare statements for children. So this would be the medical statement that you have to obtain from the doctor. And I will tell you, both for homes and centers, one of the reasons that we see this expired or not correct would be because maybe the child sees the doctor on February 1st. They enroll in your program maybe in June. They need a health care statement. So they go to the doctor and the doctor just signs your health form or signs your health form and dates it maybe in June when you went in to take in that paperwork. But the date that we work off of is actually the date that the child was seen. So the violation is due to the fact that maybe we're there in June and it was in February, it expired. So it's an expired health statement. So when they went back to the doctor in February of that, that year, the year later, you should have obtained a new medical statement. I hope that makes sense. So if they saw it February 1st of 2024, enrolled in your program in June of 2024, and the doctor signed it June of 2024, when we came out in maybe March, April, May, June of 2025, it would have been expired because it expired in February of 2025, because we work off of the date that the child was seen. So that's one of the biggest reasons I see we have a violation there. Sometimes they're just expired and we forget that's totally fine too. You know, that's probably part of it. Hazardous items accessible to children. So this would be anything, I would say more often than not, it's things marked keep away from children. So maybe it's hand soap that you buy. Maybe it's scissors, adult scissors that you're leaving out in the home. And maybe it's you know, your dish soap or your knives on the counter. For homes, it's a little tricky because we do go through the home and you actually live there, so you're using everything. But things like in your cupboards that might be accessible. So just make sure you're doing that walkthrough and just making sure you're locking up everything that would be hazardous to a child. Another thing that we see on paperwork for children is the emergency medical authorization. Again, for homes, all of your paperwork has to be updated annually. And so emergency medical authorization is one of those pieces. And that's the piece that's giving you permission to seek medical care for the child if there's an emergency. So that also has to be updated annually. And a lot of people put that in their enrollment packets. And if the child's been enrolled there for a year, 2 years, or whatever, and they forget to update their enrollment packets, they're also forgetting to update this. And this is a big piece for us. Immunization status or exemption on the approved form for children. So then, we're looking at that Colorado approved form for immunizations. We now have the CIS program, the CIIS program. And if you get access to that, then you can actually print off the children's immunization paperwork. That's if the parents also enroll in it and all of that. But one of the biggest pieces for exemption is that the parents now can't just fill out a form and hand it to you and say, my child's exempt. For maybe a medical reason or a religious reason or a personal reason, they can do that. But what they now have to do is they have to go onto the website, do the immunization training, and then once they finish that the immunization training and the exemption piece, they actually get a certificate that states that they've completed that and that their child is, you know, you went through it, and it's dated and signed when you took that. And that's the piece that we need for when we're looking at exemptions. So it's one thing to say my child's exempt for personal reasons, but then we need that piece that you've completed that immunization training, and you will receive a certificate. It prints out for you. So that's one of the biggest things with, and then with immunization, a lot of people, take their children, the doctor prints out the immunization schedule that they've had within their office, and then they hand it to you. Well, that's not actually an approved form, so it has to be transferred over. So homes, actually anyone, can transfer those immunization records over to the approved form if you want to. And what I tell people is just staple that form from the doctor that you're copying the information from. That way they know where you got the information from. And then we have the approved form. So you can transfer that information over if your parents have not given you, or you can give it back to the parents and tell them to do it as well. Yeah, that's totally fine. Standard precautions training. This is something that we see. It's annual. It's on PDIS. I think I heard you guys were going over the PDIS right before we came on. So our PDIS has all of the required trainings for free, except for CPR first aid. There's a module on there that you can take, but unfortunately that's not allowed to take. So don't get that confused. A lot of people get that confused. So then we're seeing the module training from PDIS, but you actually need the first aid CPR certification. Abuse prevention training. This is also annual. This is the child abuse prevention training on PDIS. We see that one quite a bit. Trainings we do see because most of them for homes are annual. And it's tough sometimes getting on there and doing your trainings. Immunization training, we see that one quite a bit. Shaken baby abusive head trauma training. That one is actually good for 2 years now. So that is for if caring for children under 3. So sometimes you might not be caring for children under 3, but because your license states that you can have birth to 18, we do need to see that training because there might be a chance that you might take in a sibling that was just born, or etc. If you don't want to have those trainings, you can actually change your license to do certain ages, like 4 and up, 3 and up, whatever, and then we wouldn't look for those. Your home, your provider's health statement, we see that quite a bit. So again, we need to see that every 2 years. And for the provider, again, anyone under the age of 10 in the household, we do also need to see their statements every 2 years as well. And then again, safe sleep training, another training. So again, this is for infants, obviously, but if you would like to change your license so you don't have to take that training, you could do that. But if you don't, again, your license is for birth to 18. So we do need to see those trainings. So those are a few those are the top 10 that we see for homes. And you're going to find that they're kind of similar to the centers. Most commonly cited violations for homes. So paperwork training, 65% of our violations are made up of that for the paperwork and training. Safety, which is great, it's lower, it's 34%, so that's good to see. The keep out of reach, the safe sleep, the hazardous items, the playground, sometimes, you know, what we see a lot on playgrounds at homes, because you are at your home, you have animals, etc. There's a lot of feces out in the backyard. I will say that probably a lot of my home violations for playgrounds has to do with animal feces. So just make sure you're keeping those picked up and out of reach of kiddos. And then the outdoor hazards, maybe broken toys, maybe the wind came through. It's things like that that we see a lot of in homes. And then safety also includes supervision. And then we have other at 1%, which would be materials and posting. So like postings, do you have your license posted? Do you have your emergency posted, where they can file a complaint, etc. So things like that. And materials would be, if you have enough materials, sometimes we go into homes and they have just, maybe they don't have dramatic play, or maybe they don't have science or math. So we're looking at things like that. And that's kind of what we see in that 1%. That's great, because that means our homes are actually meeting all of our requirements pretty much for all of those materials. A lot of our homes are set up really nice, I have to say, and have a lot of great educational materials for our kiddos. That brings us to childcare centers. So again, the top one would be keep out of reach, which is almost the same as hazardous items, but keep out of reach of children items. Again, we go back to hand soap, maybe shaving cream is used a lot in centers. It's a sensory item. It's a great material for writing names. Like, there's so many different things you can do with shaving cream, but it actually says keep out of reach of children. So sometimes we see it out and about, and so we do have to cite for that. So just make sure you're reading your labels on everything that you're using with your kiddos. All staff must complete standard precautions training annually. So that's standard precautions is another training with centers that we see often. Again, that's an annual. It used to be referred to as, it's been 3 different things since I've been a licensing specialist. We used to refer to it as universal precautions, standard, and there was a third one. But it's that training that teaches you about how to handle like OSHA items, like if somebody had threw up, and how you do that. So standard precautions is kind of that, how do you handle your hazardous situations with kiddos? Staff must submit a signed medical statement within 30 calendar days, and a subsequent health statement annually. So we have changed that rule recently, where you can now, on your first date of employment, you do have 30 days to get an actual medical statement from your physician stating that you're in good health, and you have 30 days to get that to your employer. But now what we've done is every year after that, you can just now sign a subsequent statement saying that you're in good health. So we have changed that to help out with this rule a little bit, so that going to the doctor, not everyone goes to the doctor every year. So that kind of helps out with that rule, but that is something that we have been seeing frequently. All staff must complete disaster preparedness training. This used to be called FEMA. You can still take the FEMA training if you do choose to do so. I will say the PDIS training, emergency disaster preparedness training on PDIS is way easier. I've taken both. So I would encourage you to do the PDIS, but you can still take the FEMA training if you want. But this is in relation to emergency training, disaster preparedness, making sure you're prepared for all of the things. COVID was a great example of when that came in handy, learning about all that. All staff must complete abuse report training. Again, we go back to the abuse reporting. That is an annual reporting, annual training that everyone has to take regardless. There's no age on this one. It doesn't matter if you're involved with kids. You have to take it actually prior to working with kids, and then after that, you just do it as it expires. So that is one that you have to take prior. We never used to require it prior to working with kiddos, and I think that's why we're seeing it a little bit more, because it used to be, okay, you would be hired and then you take your trainings, do staff training days, but now you do have to have it prior. So I think that's why we might be seeing that one a little bit more. Non-approving health or fire inspections. So for centers, homes do not have to do this, but for centers, they do have to receive a health inspection and a fire inspection. And those are good for us every 2 years. Now fire might say you have to do it every year, or health says you have to do it every year, but we will take them. They're good for 2 years for us, but we do see those. I want to also point out, and especially homes as well as centers, that in the Denver area, you do have to have a business license as well. And that is kind of a violation that we see a little bit more lately, those business licenses that you have to apply for. And again, that's just Denver County. Indoor and outdoor materials must be safe, sturdy, free of hazards. So again, we go back to the play center. We're looking at, is it cracked? Is it broken? Are there broken toys laying around? Maybe there's a problem with the fence. There's an entrapment issue. So we're looking for all of these things that might be a safety issue with kiddos. And the playgrounds tend to be an area we focus on, especially when you have equipment that's over 18 inches. You have to have 6 inches of resilient surfacing. So resilient surfacing, I would say, when I'm out, usually is probably one of the most things that I cite for, only because number one, you have to have 6 inches if you have anything over 18 inches in height. But then we also have a rule that states that it has to be like loose fill, like mulch. If you have mulch for resilient surfacing, it has to be raked regularly to ensure that resiliency factor is there. Because when it's compacted, it's not going to do the purpose that it's supposed to serve. So that is something that we see frequently, especially around swings, ends of slides, because your kids are kicking it out from underneath the swings, or when they get down to the slide, obviously they're kicking it. So you see these little gullies. So that's a lot that we see. And then of course, if it's a high running area, it gets compacted. So just make sure you're surveying, have a rake out there, have your staff out there with rakes right before they go out on the playground. Maybe somebody goes out and just does a quick rake through to make sure we have that resiliency factor with that. But that is probably one of the things that we see the most, is that resilient surfacing. Background checks for all staff. So now over the last couple of years, this has changed. Background rules are a federal rule, so we have no say in what we can or cannot do with those. We do. So basically everyone working with children have to have background checks, and then they also have to have the out-of-state background checks. So that rule came into place, I don't know, a couple years ago, 5 years ago, I would say at this point. So anyway, so if you've lived out of state in the last 5 years, you have to obtain all of those background checks as well, send them in. And the piece that I see the most missing with centers is that once the staff member receives all of the background checks, let's say from Texas, they then have to take those background checks, fill out our out-of-state background checklist form, and send it into our BIU unit, and they will send you a letter that states they've cleared X amount of states for the out-of-state background check. So if you lived in 5 and you submit all of that paperwork, you'll get a letter that states that they've been cleared in 5 states. So that's one of the ones that we see a lot. The other one that we see quite frequently is CBI missing. Now, maybe the digital fingerprints, when you send your staff down to do digital fingerprints, and that generates 2 letters, the CBI letter and the FBI letter. They're all, FBI is now emailed to you. CBI is created on your SDDS account. So you have to go into that account and you have to retrieve it within, I think it's 90 days. You have to retrieve it in 90 days. If you don't, it disappears and you can no longer print it off. So we are seeing a lot of CBI missing because, you know, we get the email saying that it's there and you're like, oh, great, they've cleared. And then we forget, we're busy, we forget to print it off. The great thing is now you can call our unit and you can tell them, hey, we had this person fingerprinted last month, or, you know, 90 days ago, we forgot to print it off. We can't have access to it anymore. Our BIU unit, instead of having you re-fingerprint, because that generates a lot of work for everyone, they will actually just send what looks very similar to a portability letter. And that will list, okay, this staff member has cleared trails, FBI, CBI, and out of state. And it will list it on there. So you don't have to re-fingerprint your staff if you don't. Now, we always say to call the BIU because there could be instances where they may not be able to do that. But if it's within a reasonable amount of time, they most likely can get you that letter. So then you don't have to spend the fees on it. But that is probably for background checks, that is really the biggest one we see, that the CBI is missing because we just forget to print it off. Emergency drills, tornado drills, and fire drills. So we do require a record. We have to see when we come on site 12 months of the drills being done. Now, fire drills are done monthly. Your emergency drills are done quarterly, and then your tornado drills are done from March to November. And so we have to see records. Now, if you're a center that closes during summer, great. You just let us know. And then obviously we're not looking for those, but we are seeing that these are not being done as frequently as required. So that is a violation that we see quite a bit. Or sometimes what we see as well is that, okay, you're doing them, but you're forgetting to record them. Well, we still need to see that record for 12 months. And just remember, all records have to be kept for 3 years. So you technically have to have 3 years worth, but we're only looking at or verifying 1 month, 12 months, 1 year. So that is one that we see frequently. Emergency medical authorization. Again, this is for children. This would be your children's record forms. And again, it goes back to enrollment forms for centers also have to be updated annually. But if you have a child who's been there since they've been an infant, sometimes that doesn't always get updated. And so then the emergency medical authorization piece gets missed. So just make sure you're updating those annually. One other thing that I see with this as well is that sometimes some centers are open during the school year, just like schools. So they're open in August and they close in May. Well, sometimes if a child is enrolled, let's say in May or April of 2024, it's good until April of 2025, but we come out in May of 2025, it's expired, and they just forget to update it because some people like to enroll kids and do all of their annual paperwork in August, but if they have that late starter that starts halfway through the year, well, sometimes their paperwork is not updated annually like it should be. So that emergency medical piece is missed because it's not on the schedule that they have for all the other kiddos. So just make sure whatever you choose to do, you have a good routine in updating those children's records. With centers, the most commonly cited, so the paperwork and training is 60% of violations. Safety would be the 22. And again, it's all the same thing that we talked about with home, what makes those up. 22%, and then other would be 18%. So we're looking at materials, postings. I would say postings is a big one that we do see because the license is posted, or maybe you don't have your complaint posted or emergency numbers posted. Sometimes we're lacking in materials, which we now require X amount of materials. We never used to. We always just said just enough to cover your kiddos. So, but now our rules have been changed to be very specific. So I would encourage you to look at those rules and regs to get caught up on what we've changed in that. But other is composed of those things. So those are the most commonly the top 10. And then so supports to avoid these licensing violations. I mean, work with your licensing specialist and local counsel. We have a link to our public resource folder that has everything in there, like even to help you with like maybe planning for emergency disaster preparedness. There are things in there. We have a list of all the required trainings, both for home and for centers. So then you know what's annual, what's not annual. And then, connect with your local early childhood councils. They are a wealth of information. They actually are a great resource for you. So when you can't get a hold of your specialist, hooking up with them would be great. They're just a great resource. They also know about all the grants out there. They can just really give you a heads up on everything. When we go to visits, we do have a child care center and a home center visit checklist. We actually created these during COVID because we were doing virtual visits. So we actually created those during that time, those checklists, and we've just kind of carried them through. And so now we will hand those out. Those are actually in our public resource folder, so you could check those out, see what we're going to be looking for, and kind of prepare yourself for your visit. And just to give you a heads up, your visit, technically you open your license, that's your anniversary date. And then every year after that, you'll always receive a visit 30 days prior to the year before. So don't confuse your visit with your anniversary date. So if we did you in May last year, this is the same for centers and homes. We will come out, if we did in May, we'll come out in April. And we have to complete it 30 days prior to the one that we did previously. So we do get that question a lot. I think you're early, but we're working off of our requirement that we do have to work 30 days in advance. So just familiarize yourself with some of these things and get hooked up with our CDEC website. We have so many resources on there that can help you out with through all of these things. And we have time probably, I think we're supposed to be done at 7, so we have a few minutes for question and answers if you'd like. Did that hit what you needed?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay,
Are there any
perfect.
questions?
Hi, I have oh, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, no worries. I just had a quick question. What is the best material then for resurfacing? Would it be like rubber mulch, or where would you find, like when you're looking for specifics on stuff like that, is there a resource to go to look for like the best materials, hazards to avoid when you're setting it up?
So our rules and regs actually have a great section on that, but for resilient surfacing, I believe our rule specifically says it says it can be like mulch, the rubber mulch, the pour in place, the
Pea gravel.
pea gravel. There's several that we list that you can have. So our rules would be that way. So if you're setting up, let's say you're setting up an actual play center and you're having a company organization come in to install it for you, they actually will know all of that information to meet code when they do that. So, but if you have any questions pertaining to a playground, I would highly encourage you to contact your licensing specialist, because sometimes there are those weird wonky things that we don't see in rules and regs, like sometimes in the gray areas. So just contact them and they can help walk you through anything that you have a specific question on.
Okay, sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. I don't know if you can hear me. Do you guys, when my licensing specialist comes out, I know there's a resource to have a playground safety inspection person come. Where do I find that? Is just on the CDE, the Colorado Department of Early Childhood website, or do I just need to reach out to my specialist to get in contact with one? Because I feel like that would make my life a trillion times easier and your
Yeah.
guys' life a trillion times easier, because I believe she said if we have like a log of a playground specialist, she won't have to do as deep as a inspection as she typically does.
Correct.
Okay.
So, so actually I have that certification. And so, yes, so basically what happens is it's called CPSI, Certified Playground Safety Inspector.
Okay.
And you can actually go to the registry just in your like Google site.
Okay.
Just type in playground inspector Colorado, and it'll bring up the registry for it. Type in the registry for the CPSI. It'll bring it up, and you can search who is certified in your area.
Okay.
And you can have them come out. Now, not everybody does playground inspections. They do charge for it, just FYI. But yes, she is correct. So they will, once they come out and they do a complete inspection of your playground, they will actually give you a very intense report. And we will take that and just make sure it's signed off and dated correctly. And then really the only thing we're looking at are kind of like safety issues and if your resilient surfacing is meeting everything. But yes, that is correct. And you would just have to go to the registry to find that.
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
Your council might know as well, because I know that that's kind of new over the last couple of years. So they might actually have a resource for you as well. We as licensing specialists don't do that because we can't promote one person over another.
Okay. Yep, that makes sense.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
She's out cold.
She is super cute.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Sorry, this might be a dumb question, but when I decide to start hiring staff and they start doing their trainings, do I have to give them their own profile, or do they just like register through PDIS too, or like how does that work?
Christina, do you want to take that one? This is her first time doing these, but I want to include her too.
Yeah, sure. It's not a dumb question. No. So you'll want them to create their own profile. And a lot of times, so we always recommend that they use their personal email through PDIS, just FYI, because that's their professional development portal that they'll take with them. If they ever leave your employment and go to another center or anything like that. So that it'll all be stored in one place, but they'll create their own profile. There are no silly questions. So.
That's right. And the other thing with that too is you want to make sure that they link their in their profile, they link to your license number. Yes. So then you can have access to that, and we can see them as well and be able to go in and look at their trainings through programs that we have.
So I had a couple questions too. My name is Michelle, and I just am finishing up my first year as a licensed home provider in Adams County. So my initial licensing inspection, I didn't have any kiddos, So my new inspection is going to be in the next couple of weeks. And unfortunately, I think like I am going to have some of those paperwork violations that you were talking about. Yes. Like my own children who are in my care, their medical forms, expired like a couple months ago, but we were sick and missed our appointment and they couldn't get us in until like the end of May. And there was like nothing I could do about that, So what happens when you get those violations? So this will be kind of new for me.
So, I mean, you can just see the violations as items to correct. So it may go on the report. And so you will just have Certain violations are correct immediately violations. Some violations you get some more time for, but you will want to just respond to those. She'll give you what's called a response form. And so any violations that you have on the report, you will fill out that response form stating how you corrected those violations. And so you'll just send that in to her. So like, for example, you're talking about your health statements. You already, you can just say, child had a doctor's visit on 5/20, updated health appraisal is in their file or something like that. And the specialist may ask for a copy, they may not, but that's how they'll make sure that was corrected through that response form.
Okay. And then I had
question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, it's for you. This is actually for your benefit. I don't know if this is true or not, and I may have misheard it, but I believe for children, don't you get a grace period if we have a piece of paper that states that they have an upcoming physical?
They're
It
scheduled.
will suffice, correct? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, if it's in writing and you have a scheduled date, yes.
Okay. I was like, so
That's
that's
good.
kind of a benefit too, and that's newer. That's a newer rule, correct? That's
I don't think, Tina, I don't think that's new, is it?
Okay.
No,
I was
that's
like,
always been in rule. Yeah.
Okay.
So basically with childcare health, for the medical statements, you have 30 days after the expiration to get it to you, because I think it was Jessica who was asking the question, it specifically applies to that. Sometimes you can't get into the doctor right on the date that it expires or before, because insurance won't cover it if you end up going before or et cetera. So we do have that built in there, and that's always been a rule that you have that 30-day grace period. So it actually wasn't Jessica that asked that question. It was Michelle. And so Michelle, same thing with you. As long as you can show that you have a doctor appointment coming up, you should be okay.
Okay. And then I had another related question. I have an enrolled family that doesn't really go to the doctor. They gave me an immunization exemption form, and it is on that state form. And they were asking if there was an exemption form for the general health appraisal. And I said, I didn't think so. I gave them the form and they said, well, we'll just have to find a doctor. We don't go to the doctor. And I'm just kind of waiting. And so that's new. I don't know. Is there such a thing as an exemption for that?
No, I don't,
Okay.
not that I know of.
Okay.
I've
I
never
didn't think
heard of
so
that.
either, but I said I would ask. So
yeah, but the thing that they could do is just go to an urgent care and have them do a school physical.
oh, that's a good idea. Okay, thank you.
So they could do that if you wanted to. And just to be clear, on the immunization form, they took the actual training and did the whole exemption and got the certificate, right? It looks very different than
Oh, they gave me the form, and it's it has like the state of Colorado logo.
Yeah.
And it's
so we
like
do have our immunization Colorado approved forms, but then there's that piece. If you look at it, look down at the bottom and see if there's a training date on it, that they took the training with the date, and then you'll know if they took it. If they didn't, request for them to do that, because they have to.
Yeah,
okay,
and just
so I'll get a violation for that if they didn't do the training. Okay.
And just to follow up to that too, if they do have that exemption, they will have to take that every time an immunization is due. So it's not just a one-time exemption.
Yes.
Yeah, so a good thing to note, because we'll see that as well.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
that's great. Yeah, that's a good point. Especially for those little babies that have to go every
couple months.
Yeah. Okay, that is a lot. Well, they're they're UPK kids. I only have them like for this year. It's not going to be an ongoing enrollment, so that makes it a little easier, but
yeah. Yeah. And are you open for the summer?
Well, I'm just finishing my first year. I only had UPK kids this year, and I haven't gotten any new enrollments. So I guess I'm close to the summer, but if I had somebody approach me for summer care, then I would be open. So I'm kind of figuring it out right now.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So like Christina pointed out at another violation, she was giving a response. You could state that, you know, you're closed for the summer, the child's no longer attending, but moving forward, you will do, you know, request the parents to do that
Okay.
if you get, if you receive a violation for that and your kid no longer attends. Mhm.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a building violation question. If I'm gonna be looking at a place that's kind of in a shopping mall, but they have like a grass area that the owners are willing to put up a fence for me if everything like gets approved in the previous stages, is there, what kind of regulations do I need to follow for like I don't know, like crossing, like does it have to be fenced to the building? Or because it'd be access to the back and I would be right on the corner of the building, so kind of like a main thing, like could I use a retractable fence for them to walk safely? Or like what are my guidelines on that?
Do you want that, Christina, or do you want me
Yeah.
to?
Does the door lead directly to the playground? Or you're saying they have to cross like an outside sidewalk or parking lot or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so in that case, if it's not adjacent, you would want to submit a waiver for that, but it is an option. So you could submit, it's called a hardship waiver, and you can do that through your provider hub. And they would just want a safety plan to make sure that, you know, there's no vehicular traffic that would be dangerous, things like that. They might have you draw something to show kind of your route to the playground. But usually something like that would warrant a waiver. Yeah. But doable.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any others? All right, I think we'll hand it back over to your leader.
Well, thank you, both of you so much. That was awesome. And great questions, everybody. And we'll see you on the next one.
All right. All right. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you,
Have a great
guys.
night.
Enjoy your
Okay,
night.
have a good night.
Thank
Everybody
you.
else can hang out for a bit. Dora is going to go ahead and go into some awesome stuff. She always has some knowledge to drop here. So go.
Raul
Dora.
might be overselling how fun this will be, but yeah, okay, we're gonna do stuff. All right.
Didn't say fun. I said awesome.
Oh, okay. That's even better than fun, and it's not that fun. It's minorly fun. It's kind of fun. Okay. So some of you guys sound like you're kind of new to the ECE system. So this is kind of an overview of the ECE system and ECE funding. There are different variations depending on where you're located. So specifically, Denver has the Denver preschool program. If you're not in Denver, then that won't apply to you. So just kind of ignore that part. But I do review some of these different pieces. So kind of what you're seeing here, I wanted to give you guys like a spread out of kind of what this looks like as you get higher and higher through the system. So the program is kind of where you guys are at. You guys are running your programs. You have centers, family childcare homes, all those things. Above you are the early childhood councils. So every county in the state of Colorado is served by an early childhood council. Some have like specialized areas. Some do social emotional stuff. For me at the Denver Early Childhood Council, we do like some business stuff, but every council kind of has like some unique things that they offer. They almost always offer training, and they generally offer coaching and navigation through the Colorado Shines rating system. So if you need help with that or your ratings coming up, that is kind of the people that you can talk to about that. You should know who's at your council. So if you're new or you're just starting, as soon as you get your license, you want to contact your council because they have resources that can help you. Above the councils are the Early Childhood Council Leadership Alliance. So it's kind of the hub of what all the councils are. They do a fair amount of advocacy. They advocate for different kinds of legislation. They also have trainings and stuff. So that's ECLA. It's the Early Childhood Council Leadership Alliance. So if you want to kind of dig into that, I think they also have a job board as well. And then above them, we have the Colorado Department of Early Childhood. So that is licensing. That is the people that determine Colorado Shines rating and what they change and the different indicators that are rated. They do a lot of that kind of stuff. They do a lot of legislation. That's where the licensing waivers and appeals are. So if you are appealing because you want to be able to do a certain type of gate, or you want to serve a child that's too young to be in the classroom, like let's say I want to have a 2-year-old that's 2 years and 8 months old in a 3-year-old classroom, like if I wanted to submit a waiver for that, that goes to the state. So that's the Colorado Department of Early Childhood. And then above them, we kind of have the legislators, the lawmakers, the Joint Budget Committee, the people that kind of determine how much money flows into early childhood. So that is kind of the highest level of kind of the early childhood system. So that's really what that looks like. Because I know there's a lot of terminology and different entities and all kinds of stuff happening. That's kind of what the system looks like. There's also ECE system community partners. So there's different partners within the early childhood education system. There's Early Childhood Servant Corps. If you're interested in that, they have volunteers. They hire people who are generally retired from different fields. Some of them are retired accountants. I know one that's a retired glass artist. But they really want to be useful and want to be doing something and contributing. So they volunteer in early childhood programs to sit with the children, to read, they get background checked. That's a really cool program. The Colorado Children's Campaign is kind of a legislative arm, and they advocate for different laws around children and families specifically. So they'll legislate for those free lunches that passed for the public schools. That was kind of something they pushed for. They legislate around healthcare for families, that kind of stuff. Then you have the Early Childhood Education Association, that's ECEA. They are kind of like a union for early childhood. So they're always trying to figure out like group health insurance, and they have an event coming up in August for like family and childcare providers. They do a fair amount of legislative work too with the state. So they're all kind of pushing for things that will benefit early childhood, specifically as a small business. The Rocky Mountain Early Childhood Conference is an annual conference that's put on by the Denver Early Childhood Council. They do a lot of trainings. It counts for a lot of training hours. So if you need some trainings, that comes up the next year. I think it's going to be in April. And then the Early Childhood Leadership Commission is a group of early childhood professionals that advocate to the state to try to give them like some levity around what's really happening on the ground and how the different rules and legislation that's passed by the state really impacts providers. So that's kind of those. It's a lot of people and a lot of things. But generally it works together, hopefully, for the progress of early childhood as we kind of go through the system and different budgets and stuff pass. Oops. Went too far. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about funding specifically. So one of the things as a small business and kind of as you start out is diversifying your funding and kind of having a mix of people if you can. Right now, CCAP and TANF are frozen. Those programs really serve low-income families. So basically the essential workers, people that work at gas stations, the grocery store, all of those essential workers generally qualify for CCAP. CCAP right now is frozen for 3 to 5 years, but there's still families that are on CCAP now. So you might have families coming to you that already have a CCAP or TANF case. It helps sometimes to have lower income families because they can get funding stacked on top of themselves. Like they can get the Denver preschool program, and they can get UPK, or they can get CCAP and DPP. Like there's sometimes a mix of different things. They can get Head Start and CCAP. But if you can kind of diversify some of the funding streams that you take, sometimes that just helps to kind of mix up your funding streams. So it helps with financial stability, helps you serve more families. You can qualify for grants sometimes if you serve low-income families. And it just kind of helps you be adaptable as things change and become more flexible. So kind of think about that, like, are you going to serve low-income families? Are you going to take CCAP? Do you want to do a fiscal agreement? Do you just want to do private pay? Think about those things kind of as you're getting things set up. So the funding streams, we have CCAP. That's the one that's frozen, but there's still a lot of families across the state that are on CCAP. So as long as they renew and reauthorize on time, they'll stay on CCAP. I think at some point during this course, we'll kind of do CCAP retention, depending on how interested you guys might be in that, but really how to keep CCAP families that you might have. There's also the UPK program, which is Universal Pre-K. That serves children ages 3 to 4, depending on what their needs are. It's not a ton of hours, but it's something. And then the Denver preschool program, if you're located in Denver, DPP can help you. And if you want more information on the Denver preschool program, we can talk about that in a coaching session. I think he's not clicking. Oh, it says no. All right, hold on. Woo! Any questions about any of that so far? It's a lot of stuff. Okay. So this is just more information about CCAP if you're considering taking CCAP families. CCAP refers to CCAP and also to TANF. So TANF is basically the welfare system. So if somebody loses their job, they can go onto TANF and get cash assistance, transportation assistance, food stamps, all that. Like it's kind of the safety net for families that are low income or might be unemployed or anything like that. So CCAP's administered by the county of the child's residence. So if you're in Adams County, you might get children from Denver, but it's kind of wonky right now because of this freeze. Some counties are letting children and families transfer to other counties for care and some aren't. So it gets a little weird. If you have specific questions about that, let's talk about it in coaching session. The families use either the ATS or the ELV core system to sign in and out. So CCAP families do have kind of a separate sign in and out system than private pay families do. These families qualify based on their income and their family size. Parents pay a portion to your program and then the county pays the rest. So depending on their income, they could pay from $7 up to $500. Just depends on how much they make. So the parent will pay their portion and then the county pays the rest of it. So that it kind of makes up a fuller rate. Part of the reason that CCAP is frozen is because the state did an audit and found that the feds did an audit and found out that the state of Colorado wasn't paying providers enough money. So now the state is paying providers more money, but it can only serve so many families that way. You know, if I had $100 and I needed to feed 100 people, I could give them spaghetti and I'd be able to do that. But if I had $100 and I was trying to give people a better, healthier meal like steak and a salad or something, I can only serve maybe 20 people. So that's kind of the reason why CCAP is frozen the way it is. It's an attendance-based program right now, and full-time is 5 or more hours per day. So that's kind of what that looks like from the CCAP perspective. If you're interested in providing CCAP families care or you want to serve them and you're curious about how to get a fiscal agreement, you can contact the county, Denver the Human Services Department for each county. So like Adams County Human Services will administer CCAP for Adams County and so on and so forth. El Paso County will have El Paso Human Services. They're the ones that do CCAP for that. You can ask your new families if they know about the program. Even though CCAP's frozen, they still want people to be on the waiting list. So if you do have a family that comes, they're low income, you can't serve them, they don't have CCAP, you should still encourage them to apply and get on the waiting list because that's helping the state know how much money they need to put into the CCAP system. Again, they'll pay their portion, the county will pay the rest. The county pays you on a weekly basis based on the attendance of the children. And then the higher level your program is, so if you're level 2, you get paid a certain amount. If you're level 3, it's almost $10 more per kid per day. Level 4 is almost $10 per kid per day more. And then level 5, there isn't an increase in the CCAP reimbursement. So it is some good motivation to go through the Colorado Shine system to be able to make more money for the children you're serving. Considerations, so serving low-income families can increase your eligibility for grants for your program. Whether they're on CCAP or not, if you're able to have like a sliding scale for tuition, or you have scholarships you can find for low-income families, if you're serving low-income families, it does kind of make you eligible for more funding, just depending on what's going on. It could be for a playground, it could be for, you know, capital improvements to your building, whatever that is. Sometimes stacking the funding for low-income families can get your revenue closer to the cost of care. So sometimes, you know, if you can stack Head Start and CCAP, or you can kind of change around the funding a little bit, it can help you get closer to that, which is nice. And then it's just a good ethical practice to provide childcare to working families who might not be able to participate and have childcare if you weren't serving them. Sarah, do you have a question?
I do. I had a quick question because I'm definitely, you know, not started, not licensed. I'm just curious, is this the same course if you're wanting to have like something on a smaller scale with kids with disabilities? Is that something that would be a different course, or would you still start the same?
Of course, as far as like this training?
Yeah, like when you're, I guess to make sure that I'm going in the right direction, would it be the same for atypical children as disabled kids? For
I
as
believe
far as like
that
licensing and taking CCAP, is it still CCAP for kids with disabilities? Is
it
that more on?
it is still CCAP, and I think the reimbursement rate is higher for children with atypical needs. So that might be something you want to call the county and ask about, because you might be eligible for a higher reimbursement rate because you're serving fewer children that are higher needs. So call your county human services office and ask them about the reimbursement rates for that.
Okay.
And I would assume
Thank
that
you.
something, yeah, I would assume that something like that might also involve like Medicaid billing. But I would call your human services and ask them what kind of funding you'd be eligible for if you were caring for atypical children.
Okay.
And there might also
Thank
be
you.
grants for that too.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions around this so far? Okay. The Denver Preschool Program, it sounds like really few of you are in Denver. So if you're in Denver, let me know and we can meet and talk about that kind of separately. So this is kind of an example of how stacking can work. They did just recently pass legislation that CCAP and UPK will not be able to be stacked for next year. So I did just kind of want to talk about that for a minute. It used to be that you could stack UPK and CCAP, and starting next year, you won't be able to do that. So I just kind of wanted to mention that that's not an option for next year. The Universal Preschool Program provides various funding amounts based on hours. If they're a 3-year-old that has been identified as having an IEP, they're eligible for more hours. So do kind of look into UPK if you want to, especially if you're serving children who are 3 or 4 years old, because that's just money that you can stack on top of CCAP or on top of a private pay rate. The program is not able to charge above and beyond the state reimbursement amount. So right now the reimbursement amount from the state for UPK, I think, is like $13 an hour. So you can't be getting that for like 5 hours a day and then charging parents, $30 each hour in addition to that. So say there's an 8-hour day. If UPK is paying you for 5 of those hours, you can't charge the other 3 at like $30 an hour. It has to be that same $13 an hour that the state is reimbursing. So do be kind of mindful of that if you're taking UPK funding. Cost of care modeling and considerations. So whether you already have a program or you're thinking about starting a program, it's really important to know what the cost of care is. And that number is really what it's actually going to cost you to provide care. So Sarah, with your program and kind of talking about atypical child care, what would that cost you? What would your ratio be? How many children are you willing to care for? What are you going to pay yourself? Like, it's really looking at what the actual cost of care is. And generally in early childhood, people are not getting what the cost of care is. So there's always kind of a gap, which is a problem. So the way you find your cost of care is really by looking at your total expenses. So if you add up all the things you're going to have to pay for, so electricity, staffing, any benefits you're offering, just really anything, food, supplies, all the everything. Like if you add up all of those expenses, let's say for a month, all those anticipated expenses, and then divide it by the number of children you serve, that's kind of the easiest way to get to what your cost of care is. And once you know that, then you know what you can think about charging tuition to be. But just be mindful that like generally the cost of care, I think for a cost of care for like a preschooler is like $1,900 a month or something at this point. And there's very few parents that can pay that private pay rate. So just be mindful, like there's usually a gap there, and that can be helped by like stacking some different funding or going after grants. If you're a larger program, it helps to know what the breakdown is by age of the child. So for example, it's more expensive generally to care for infants and toddlers than it is to care for older children, just because the ratio is lower. So since it's a lower ratio, it just is more expensive. If you know what the cost of care is per age group, that can help you determine what your tuition amount should be as well. There's also a cost of care calculator here. So that's also really helpful. And these slides will be in the Google Classroom, but if you do really want to take a minute and get kind of deep into it, especially you, Jessica, for your program planning, get into this cost of care calculator and like really work through like what that would really be, because it's immensely helpful for your financial planning, because you want to make sure that whatever program you want to start is going to be viable. You know, you don't want to start a bunch of stuff and then realize like, well, I can't charge what it's going to cost me. So this is a problem. So do kind of look into that. I see something in the chat. Good place to start looking for grants. Starting your early childhood council is a good place to look for grants. If there's something specific that you're looking for a grant for, like capital improvement grants, you could look at Raul might have some ideas for, you know, different funding streams for small business startup funds. You could try something like that, the provider hub, your local councils. If you're looking for like a playground grant, you could look at like ECHO. It's ECHO. If you just Google that, Google like ECHO playgrounds, and that can kind of help you get to that organization. They do grants for like nature-based playgrounds. But if you have some questions about that, you can definitely email me and we can set up a time to talk about that for specifically what you're looking for. It is really hard right now in UC in general, just because there's not a lot of money flowing through right now. It's kind of a feast or famine thing. So right now, it's not great. It'll change in like a year or two because that's just the nature of how early childhood funding works.
I was gonna say, do you know of any grants available right now? Because I used to always see them on the provider hub, and I just haven't seen any. And and I'm not exaggerating, or maybe I'm missing it, but I feel like within the last 6 to 8 months, I really haven't seen
Yes.
really the links or the resources that there used to be.
Yeah. The money's really dried up right now. And that, I don't know if that will change next fiscal year or not. It's just hard to kind of predict from this. So when it happens, there's a lot of grants for a lot of different things, and then it kind of dries up and there's nothing. And then there's more money that gets infused and there's a lot of things. Right now we're experiencing kind of the end of a lot of grants that happened during COVID. So during COVID, there was tons of money that was flowing through for like trainings and children and operating and all kinds of stuff so the programs wouldn't close. And a lot of those were like 3 to 5 year grants. So now they're kind of ending. So right now it's going to be kind of dry for a minute and then they'll get more money infused. I don't know, probably the first quarter of next year, I would guess. But it is very hard to predict. The best thing to do is just really subscribe to all the things that you would see. So like CAUIC, your council newsletter, the state's newsletter, the PDIS newsletter, like just really go through all of those different things and make sure that you're connected to all of the different newsletters and like information that flows through those organizations. Because that's the best way to see what's coming through. But there's a lot of them. It's a lot of information all the time.
Are there ever any grants that help with just like wages or rent or those kinds of things? Because, like materials are great, but you only need so many toys. When you're not getting any CCAP kids, you really need to just pay your rent or have wages, but it doesn't seem like there are grants for those sorts of things. Is there a reason for that, or do you know?
The honest answer is that a lot of nonprofit organizations and philanthropists don't want to give operating money because they feel like if they have to constantly infuse money for you to operate, then you're doing something wrong. And in early childhood, that's not really the case. Like we just can't charge what the cost of care is. Like it's a flawed business model just kind of inherently. Like parents can't afford to pay what it really costs and providers can't really absorb those fees either. So at some point, we're going to have to do something. I'm not sure what that will be yet. I think UPK was kind of their attempt to try to ease some of that and create some universal funding, but it's not as much as it probably needs to be. So that's kind of why you don't see grants for that. Because if you could write a grant and get like additional money for compensation, everyone would do that. I think that's my honest answer to that one. I think
I figured it was something like more of a principle, but it's especially when you can't get CCAP or whatever. It's like, well, you really, there's only so many toys, like I said, you really need to just pay your rent for another month,
Yeah. Well, a lot of the early childhood funding, they think that if they give you money to pay your rent this month, then what are you going to do next month? Like a lot of the foundations in early childhood want to go towards systemic changes and like funding systemic changes. But that doesn't happen if we don't have more money for compensation or just basic operating. Because I don't think many people understand the gap in the cost of care and what parents can afford to pay, which we bring up advocacy for all the time.
Right. I don't think they understand you can't do economies of scale in childcare. You can do that in
Yes.
manufacturing, but in
Yes.
childcare, you're set with your ratios, and there's just so much you can do. So they feel like I'm paying so much money, but it's like you don't get, there is no economy of scale here. It's not,
Yes.
it's a different business model we're talking about. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. So it's kind of that's my guess for the reason of that. You know, they think if they can change the system, they can teach you to fish instead of just giving you a fish for your day and helping you pay rent. But really, like, the systemic changes are struggled just because of the nature of this business. Maria, if you want more information on the Echo Playgrounds, just go ahead and make a meeting with me and we can kind of talk through it and I'll show you the website and stuff. So the cost of care, kind of what we're talking about, Michelle, like, I think it's important for people to understand what the cost of care really is and then what they're paying. And knowing that there's a gap there, because I do think you're right. A lot of parents are like, but I'm paying like $1.5 grand a month for childcare. Like, where is this money going? Like, if they don't understand what the cost of care is, then they just don't understand it, you know? So I think advocacy for early childhood really starts with, you know, understanding the cost of care, letting parents know, like, hey, you know, the cost of care for a 4-year-old in Denver, Adams County, El Paso County, whatever, you know, when you calculate all that out, it's really $2,100 a month or something, and our tuition is $1,700. So I understand it's a lot, but the cost to provide care is a lot, and this is why. You know, like, really helping them to understand that. I think the more we can kind of market and get people and parents and families to understand that, I think the better off we'll be. So that is my thing. I'm on that all the time. There's always a cap. So this is kind of showing like what that gap is. So if your cost of care is $2,400, CCAP's reimbursing $800, that's like a huge monthly gap. So when you're trying to figure out what you're going to charge for tuition or what funding streams you're going to do, you want to try to get that gap as small as possible. Generally, there'll always be a gap because no one can afford to pay what the cost of care is. And that's when we'll talk to a financial expert during the course of this class, but really that's where it's important to really think about what are your expenses, what are your revenues, can you get a company to maybe sponsor childcare, or can you get donations from someone around you, or can you do a partnership with an organization that's nearby? Like, this is where you really have to get creative because you need to try to narrow that gap as much as possible. Otherwise, your business just like isn't viable. So again, determining that thing of tuition, the cost of care is $2,400 a month, private pay could be $2,200, and that would leave a $200 monthly gap. But you need to know what your cost of care is to really go through all these steps. And I think that's like the most important message for this. Whether you're already operating or you're new or you're thinking about operating, how many classrooms are you going to have? How many children are you going to care for? How many staff members do you need? What is the ratio of the children you want to watch? And then really either use that calculator or just sit with a little Excel spreadsheet. If you want a budget spreadsheet, I can give one to you too if you just want to mess around with something in Excel. But really think about what is the cost of care, because that's where you need to start. Otherwise, you're just making up numbers and that's not going to help you. So a note about the published rate. There are some funders and entities that are going to ask you for your published rate. There's no reason why your published rate should not be your cost of care. Because in what world would you ever put the rate, like your tuition is less than what the cost of care is? Like in any business, you at least want to get the money back you're putting in, right? I see a lot of providers that put their tuition as like $800 when their cost of care is like $1,500. I advocate for providers to put what the cost of care is. And then parents will be scared and be like, this is really high. Like, on that same tuition sheet, put the cost of care for providing childcare for a infant, toddler, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, whatever, is this amount of money per month. We work with different funders and the state and the county, whatever, to be able to offer lower rates to our families. On average, families pay X. That's fine. Okay. But like, let them know, like, the cost of care is really this, and it is high and it is just crazy. Yes. You're able to offer a lower rate, but it's important that parents know that, because otherwise they're all just running around talking about how expensive things are without understanding what the cost and the value is of the care they're getting. And CCAP will ask for your rates. If you're in Denver, DPP will ask for your rates. I'm not sure if UPK asks for your rates or not, but your rates should always be what the cost of care is, because you don't want to short sell yourself to the county. Or I know sometimes there's organizations too that do like market rate surveys where they ask childcare providers how much they're charging. And you guys shouldn't be charging, in theory, less than what the cost of care is. So if you see a market rate survey come around to you asking how much your tuition is, you should put what your cost of care is. Otherwise, the information they're getting is that it's like $1,100 when the cost of care is really much higher than that. So I think altogether, just as an advocacy note, it's really important that everyone know their cost of care and talk about that. So that's my rant. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this. I'm like, this is important. We need to know the cost of care and talk about it. Because yes, otherwise we just have a lot of parents that are mad about how much they pay. We're mad about how little we make. So, it's all fair. So we're going to take a minute to kind of do a group discussion. I'm not going to put you guys in like breakout rooms and get all ridiculous with it, but I would like you kind of to unmute as we've talked about this. Like, what do you think about the cost of care? Have you calculated your cost of care? And then if you have any CCAP questions specifically, since we're going through this freeze right now, I'd like to take a minute to kind of think about that too. So what do you guys think?
Personally, I think I just have noticed, like, from COVID to now, like, finding a good group of staff and having that relationship has been extremely hard. But then, not to mention, like, you find the good staff and you want to pay them accordingly, but like, get on the ECE group and you're trying to sustain, a lively wage. And like, again, understanding, like, it used to be, 2 to 3 kids would pay a teacher's wage, and now it's essentially, with all of the, like the FMLA, people are able to take 3 months with their kids and things like that. So now you're like, your bread and butter rooms, like your infant and your toddler rooms, aren't essentially as full as they used to be. So now it's kind of, you know I would say like 4 to 5 kids to pay a teacher's wage. So it's kind of really difficult. My dog just ate her snack. um so like, it's like, I'm just trying to balance, like, how do you pay them and stack these resources, um I guess, and because it seems very hard, like, to do. I
Yes.
And like, some of them, I guess, I didn't even know were available. Wrong. I know the doggy took your snack. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I know the state really has its eyes specifically on infants and toddlers because there are a couple funding streams for 3 and 4-year-olds and really nothing for infants and toddlers. And I know that they know that there's a lack of infant toddler care. And it's expensive. Like, you need an infant nursery supervisor if you're a bigger program. Like, I know the state has their eye on infants and toddlers and funding that, but I don't think anything's in motion yet. So I don't know how long it'll be till we see that.
Okay. All right. That's helpful. It's hard because I feel like teachers are really, expanding, their level on Colorado Shines, and like doing all the training courses to get, better equipped and have a better knowledge of things. But, with that, you got to pay more and things like that. So
Yeah.
it's one of those difficult things.
I think part of that is like we tried to professionalize ECE before we were able to pay ECE as professionals. Like, we started making all these credentials and this PDIS system and professional development and all these mandates on, the quality of teachers and the education of teachers, but we can't pay them as professionals. So it's a lot of pressure on the system.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think it's, they don't give us the same credit as the public school, but a public school teacher can't come into ECE without getting on Colorado Shines and doing all this work. And then they're like, why do I have to do this? I have a bachelor's degree in education. And it's like, well, because it's a part of the process. Like, we are professionals. We do make a difference. Even though you have a master's or a bachelor's, like, that will be counted. You just have to upload it and you have to like put in the work. And I think a lot of people don't realize that until they actually step foot into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, talking about this cost of care thing, I think that's important for parents to know. Like, I think there's still a lot of parents that don't understand how much professionalism goes into early childhood and all of these hoops people have to go through. So, like, put PD in your cost of care. Like, when you're really looking at that, like, how many hours are you paying teachers to do PD all the time? And how many trainings do they need to have? And what is all this other background checks and all this other stuff? Like, all of that should be in your cost of care. And if parents ask, you should explain that piece. I don't think anyone understands how much early childhood education goes through.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No. Sarah, I saw your hand raised, and then Michelle.
I had another question as well. Is there a way for like if you're going to be working, I guess, with low income families and stuff like that, is there a way for you and as the provider or the I guess slash owner or for the parents to qualify for grants to fill that gap?
I think it depends on like how atypical the needs are of the child that you're watching, because I do think like health insurance companies do help pay for care depending on the needs of the child. Set up a meeting with me and I can give you some referrals to other programs that I know that care for children, because you might want to call them and ask about that. Like the Anchor Center for the Blind cares for children that have like sight challenges, and then I know that Sewell serves children that have like behavioral challenges, but it might be worth it for you to contact some of them and ask them about their funding, and just say, I'm located over here, this is kind of what I'm looking at, what funding do you know of that's available to care for children with atypical needs? I would start with that, because I'm not specifically an expert in that area, but I know that there's programs that do serve children that are experiencing those challenges, and I think they would have they'd be great for you to talk to.
Okay, that sounds great. And then, but I guess there's like a second part of this question. For CCAP specifically, that is not just, that could be atypical children or disabled, right? That's more so low income families, right?
Yes. So that is only determined by the income of the family and not necessarily the status of the child.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
What you got, Michelle? What?
You mentioned that TANF was frozen too, and I had not heard that because we went, I think Raul was there, the ECPAC roundtable in December when we were talking with the CCAP County, and I forget her name, but the leader of CCAP in Adams County, she had said that families could get a new CCAP case through TANF right now, and that was the only option open. And I know I have a family right now that's going through a divorce custody issue, and I think she's getting on TANF. And I had told her, I think you can get on CCAP through TANF if you want to do summer care. So was I giving her wrong information? Maybe you know something I don't know.
So the state sent out a letter in March that told all the counties to freeze TANF.
I did not know that. Shoot. Okay.
Yes. Which is really hard because the last time CCAP froze, like the last time low income CCAP froze, everybody quit their jobs and went on TANF and then could roll over on a CCAP without having to wait. But this time they're both frozen. So like all low income families that don't already have a case open aren't able to get on there. And the expected time for that is 3 to 5 years.
Okay, so what they said in December, what I told this mom is actually not true. She cannot get on CCAP for the summer while she's looking for a job because she's like going through the course.
So TANF, they can participate in TANF, and right now the activity, because to be in TANF you need to be job searching or in school or doing employment stuff, whatever. So right now they're counting looking for childcare as the TANF eligibility activity, but if they find childcare, they can't get it paid for. So they're really just like wasting their clock, because they only get 60 months in their lifetime. So they're kind of wasting their clock childcare searching, but if they find childcare, it can't get funded. But at least then they're eligible for SNAP and transportation and cash assistance and all that other stuff.
Okay, but there's really not a way for them to get a new CCAP case. Okay, I didn't realize that. So good to know. Unfortunate, but okay.
Yes.
And you said this has happened in the past where CCAP has frozen?
So low income CCAP froze, I think it was like 2013 or 2010. I don't know the exact year, but a lot of the families, if their case closed for CCAP, they lost their job, their semester ended, whatever, they'd roll over on a TANF, you know, they'd go to TANF because they weren't employed. Then they would get a job and roll back on a CCAP and not have to, you could bypass the waiting list that way. But right now with TANF and CCAP frozen, there isn't a shortcut to get any kind of childcare.
Okay, so this is kind of the worst you've seen it, basically.
It's not good. It's not good. And I think there'll be something has to be done. Like we just can't have this many low-income families that can't get care. And I think eventually it'll impact the business community, and then it'll be a problem. Because there'll be a lot of parents that cannot work essential worker jobs. And we just saw how important that was. So at some point, probably in like 6 months, maybe in the fall, I don't know. At some point it'll hit the businesses where they're like, you know, we don't have any employees to hire. What's going on? And my answer will be that nobody has any childcare. So when that happens, maybe somebody will do something. I know there's talks about trying to get it on the ballot, but by the time you draft the language for that and you get the signatures to get it on the ballot and then you get to a voting year, like that's probably like a 2027 solution. And we have to find something sooner than that.
Okay.
We're working on it, Michelle. Everything's going to be totally fine.
And coming into this world at maybe a bad time, right? But oh well.
Once again, just feast or famine all the time. That's just how money in this field works. I don't know why.
So do you think it's still worth it, like going through the process to get rated and all of that, because it might come back around?
I think it's worth it if it's not costing you more than what is reasonable. You know, like if you can find a way to make it work now, it will only get better from here. You know, I wouldn't say like don't do anything, but like find a way to make it work now because it will only get better, because this is kind of like a desert time with funding and money. So if you can open something or you can operate something and make it work in this environment, like it will only get better from here. Because this is not great. But if you can make it work, then like you'll only get more money as we kind of go forward, because something has to give shortly.
That's good advice. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Comments, concerns? Everything's probably fine. Yeah, totally. Okay. Oops, I lost my thing. Now we're gonna talk a little bit about salary scale. If you want me to go through this with you specifically, definitely make like a time for consultation. This is just kind of, if you have a bigger program or you have multiple staff members, this is one of the things that is in the Colorado Shines rating. And it's basically being able to equitably explain what you're paying people and why. Which no matter what industry you're in, this is very helpful. Like, well, you have a bachelor's in ECE and 5 to 7 years of experience. So that's why you're getting hired at 2075, whatever that may be. And then if you want to, you can have additional incentives, like if they get conscious discipline certified, or if they have infant class, or if they're an infant nursery supervisor, or whatever those indicators are. But if you create one of these, it will help you through the rating, because it's one of the mandates through the rating anyway. So if you want help looking at a salary scale, let me know. I have some templates and stuff too that you guys could use. But this is, if you have more staff than just yourself, this is a very useful tool. And if you already have one because you already got rated, but you want to have somebody look at it, I'm happy to go through it with you. This is just another method for transparency around salary and equity. This came from Bright Beginnings and they gave us permission to kind of use it, but it basically shows you like this is the range based on the position and this is what the position does. So if you are an assistant teacher and you're interested in being a lead teacher, this is what that does and this is the range that you pay for it. And this also helps people see like, oh, well, if I get an associate's in ECE, I get paid X number more per hour. Or if I'm a lead teacher now, but I get promoted to an assistant director, then I'll make whatever else per hour. Like this just kind of gives transparency and gives people some motivation to have more professional development goals and to try to grow in your program. So if you want to do something like this, let me know. Questions? I feel like that was a lot of information. Are we all asleep? Is everybody okay? How are we doing? First class, everyone's still conscious, kind of? Okay. We made it! We did it! Questions? Thoughts, comments, concerns, complaints?
I just want to say thank you. This class has been very informative today.
Good. I'm glad you came. Thank you guys all for being here. I know evening stuff is rough. I feel the same. I just had 2 teenagers trying to make dinner in my kitchen, just burning stuff. Like everything's probably fine.
It has to be,
I
right?
appreciate you guys' time.
There's no smoke. That's a good sign.
I mean, teenage boys are just a complete disaster. I don't know. I'm gonna put them all in a cooking class. Like, now you go that way. Yes, thank you guys all for being here. I know evening stuff is hard. Again, this is a very informal thing. So like next week, feel free to like bring your dinner, eat your dinner, get a cup of tea, whatever. Like, just, it's a nice place to kind of learn and reflect and to ask questions in a group setting that you guys probably all have. So, and the speakers are really, really good. Like, they're really down to earth. They understand early childhood. A lot of them have done this course a couple times. Like, it's really good. Cool.
Thank you
All
for
right.
the heads up.
Yeah.
What are we
If anybody
supposed
needs
to
anything,
do?
go ahead.
What are we supposed to do for homework? We
Oh.
like go into the classroom and do stuff during the week, or
Raul, where'd you go?
Yeah.
I should know this. What is the homework for next week?
Let me look that up here real quickly. See, we've got, it says, do something this week to ensure your next licensing inspection is successful. So in terms of verifying that, just put in the stream one thing that you're going to work on to improve your licensing or get past net licensing next time or whatnot.
And if you're not open yet, feel free to put something about the cost of care or how you might calculate out some of the financials for your program with what you know so far, because it will change throughout the course of this class. But if you're not open yet, you know, you can do that as an alternative. Like, what are you thinking about your cost of care? How are you going to think about charging tuition? What might that look like? Feel free to do that if you're not open yet too.
And I'll send an email out in the next day or two with the reminder of these things. Awesome. Any other questions for Dora?
Again, feel free to use me, make those meetings with me. If none of those times that are on there work, just email me. If you have a random question you want to email me, feel free to do that too. I put my email in the chat, and that link to meet with me is also in there too. Cool. All right, everybody. Well, we'll see you next week.